Hey everyone, welcome back to Autonomy Farms, and today we're going to be getting into a new video. And before we get into the video, please go on and click the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Let's go on and get into the video. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another WILDWOODS Beekeeping podcast. Thank you all for joining in tonight. I really appreciate it. Tonight we have Glade Sessions from Utah joining as my special guest. So, looking forward to this chat, and thank you very much, Glade, for spending some time tonight.
Thanks for inviting me. It should be a good chat.
I think so as well. So my way I usually start my live streams is if you would please just briefly share with us and kind of about yourself and kind of how you got into beekeeping.
Okay, well, as you said, my name's Glade Sessions. I live in northeastern Utah, which I'm about 60 miles west of the Colorado border and about 60 miles south of the Wyoming border. I have mountains to the north of me, and we live kind of down the valley, and it's extremely dry here. Utah is the second driest state in the union, so next to Nevada. And we're extremely dry here, but we do make some good honey. My background, I'm an accountant by education. I work for the local telephone broadband wireless company, and I've been there for 30 plus years, 31 years. Here in about another 3 or 4 days, it'll be officially 31 years. Most of what I do nowadays is database administration. I do have, I spent probably 15 years as both billing manager and IT manager, so I have quite a bit of IT background with virtual servers, Active Directory, networking, that sort of thing. But most of what I do nowadays is database administration. I'm married. My wife and I have 5 kids, and we have 3 grandkids, and just absolutely love spending time with our kids. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I've been keeping bees for 10 years now. I guess this is actually going on 11. I started with 2 hives like a lot of people and lost both hives the first year. They both didn't make it through winter. Winters are hard out here, and we can get into that a little later, but winters are rough out here for bees. And the next year, even though I lost both hives my first year, I was completely hooked. And did something that I would never recommend anybody else doing. My second year, I went to 20 hives.
Wow.
And managed by probably more sheer luck than anything to keep all 20 alive for the next 2 years. after that, then I started to kind of reality kind of set in. I lost a few bees the next year. And by then though, I really dove deep into the beekeeping world and the education world of beekeeping. I read and read and read everything I could find and really just educated myself about the bee biology and taking care of them, and lots of YouTube videos, and just trying to dissect what it was that I was doing. And from there, I've gone into kind of found out in my area that I was kind of a loner out here, at least so I thought. I couldn't find anybody else to really talk to about bees. We do have one local commercial beekeeper around here, but he didn't really want to talk to me.
Mhm.
And so I just started doing the education on my own. I kept running into other people that had bees or wanted to have bees and they didn't know where to start. And so I just kind of said, well, this is what I'm doing. And after a while, they said, Glade, you should be teaching classes. And so I started teaching classes. I've tried to get a local beekeeping club together and give some of these backyard beekeepers a place, or at least a resource that was local that they could kind of go to and ask questions.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm at now. Is somebody said you should do a YouTube channel, and I kind of went, maybe. So I started a YouTube channel, and
Wow.
um, that's just kind of how my beekeeping experience has been. Somebody says, well, you should be doing this. And I'm like, well, I don't know. And somebody else says, you should be doing that. And so I start doing it.
Mhm.
So that's
Sounds
kind of
good.
where I'm at. But it's been fun. I thoroughly enjoy being in the bees and talking about bees. Just ask my family. They don't like it when people ask me bee questions because I can talk for forever.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how fast you get hooked on bees because I a couple years ago, I don't know when it was, 2023 going into 2024, I had a really rough season. Lost almost all my colonies, came out with only one, and I'm still doing it now. So even though I lost a lot of bees, and not just over winter, because I went in with six, I did get up to a lot of decent amount of bees. It's just it really all fell going into winter. But I'm still here, and those bees really definitely get you hooked. And I really enjoy it just as much as everybody in here does. We have a really good amount of people in the chat, so thank you all for joining in tonight. Make sure to go and click the thumbs up button, and I do have Glade's YouTube channel in the description below. If anybody does not know his channel, you can go down there, click that link, it'll send you to his page, and you can subscribe and put on notifications and all that good stuff. If y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will get to those in just a little bit. I have a couple topics for us to discuss real quick. My first one is, what is your season like in Utah? Because I know Utah is a different climate than a lot in ours, especially ours down here in Alabama.
Right. We are very different than what you guys are in Alabama, and that's one of the things that when I teach classes, I teach people that all beekeeping is local. And when I say local, I mean 2 to 3 miles from where your bees are at. That's your local. And here in Utah, it's much different. We're very dry. Um, and our season is relatively short. We don't get a lot of. I noticed, in Alabama and in the South, that it seems like you guys kind of get, this tree blooms or this plant
Mm-hmm.
blooms, and then a few weeks later, a different one blooms, and
Right.
then a few weeks later, a different one blooms. Um, we don't get that so much in Utah, so we don't. It's really hard to make any kind of specific varietal honey in Utah. Most of what we make honey off of in Utah is going to be alfalfa, clover, and some wildflower. That's the majority of where we're getting our honey. Now we do have some. We call them. It's called a Russian olive tree, and they're kind of. We think they're a pest. They're an invasive species to us. We don't like them too well. They've got uh, they've got great big, really big thorns on them that are just nasty. But those do bloom in May, towards about the middle of May, somewhere in there. Maybe a little bit later, towards the end of May, and those do produce quite a bit of nectar, and it's actually pretty good. So, but we don't get a ton. Most of our beekeeping season, at least where I'm at now, my section of Utah, I'm in northeastern Utah, is different than even say Salt Lake area.
Mhm.
Salt Lake sits on the other side of a mountain range from me, and their season starts about 3 weeks sooner than mine. And my season, I can't really get into bees until probably mid-March, and I might be able to go in and peek real quick and see what they're doing. But I really probably can't do inspections until April. And even then, we're going to be getting down below freezing clear into May. And we may even have snow. I think the latest I've seen snow here on the ground is like June 8th. So we can get cold. Winters can be not just sub-zero, but 20 below,
Wow.
and stay 20 below, stay below zero at least day in and day out. Actually never get above zero, even during the middle of the day. Now, we haven't had that cold of weather for a few years here, but that's certainly a possibility. We kind of live. It's called the Uinta Basin, and it's a basin because it's kind of a bowl. We have mountains to the north, mountains to the east and west, and mountains to the south of us, and we live in this big bowl, and the cold air can sink, kind of settle into that bottom of the bowl and just stay there. And so we can get a really bad inversion in our area where the fog socks in, and even though the skies are clear above the fog layer, we don't see sun. And it's really hard on bees, as you can
Mhm.
imagine, to be sub-zero in at night. And then springs are hard because we may warm up one day and be 60 in April, and 3 days later it might go back down to single digits. Um, so our beekeeping season really kind of kicks off about the middle of April. We start to get some decent bloom and some pollen coming in. We don't really see nectar until about the 1st of June, and we get June's usually our big honey month, but we can go into July and even into August. Again, this is a depends on where you're at. We have if you out here, if you're next to a farmer that raises alfalfa, but they leave their alfalfa and let it bloom, then you can have some really good honey even into August out here, where most everything has long since dried up. If they cut the alfalfa too soon, then we don't get anything. And we'll stay warm enough that the bees can fly clear into October, and then November, December, January, February, and March, the bees really are in the hive, clustered up, and they're not coming out. So it's kind of critical that you get them set up right for winter out here, because once you kind of put them to bed for winter, you just kind of have to close your eyes and pray and hope they
Mhm.
all make it, because
Yeah.
you're not getting into them again.
Well, a lot different because down here, you're talking about y'all don't get back to back things. We usually, our first thing, we'll get some small things early, like in February, some small things, but usually in March, April, we get privet, and then a little bit more like in May, right after privet's done, maybe a week, two after it's kind of faded away, we'll get our tallow, and we'll get a lot of other things, but we get a lot, some back to back things for our flows. And we also get goldenrod down here.
We don't have
Really?
goldenrod here in the fall. We have something called rabbit brush,
Really?
and it blooms in the September, October, and but I feel lucky if my bees get a cleansing flight in February.
Hmm.
If we actually break 40 degrees in February, and my bees can get out and take a cleansing flight, that's lucky.
Yeah, because down here, a lot of beekeepers will be doing splits in February,
Yeah,
mid-February splits.
you guys start, and I get jealous because you guys are down there in your bees and making
Yeah.
splits, and I'm like, my bees haven't even broken cluster for 3 months.
Mhm. I usually don't split that early, but a lot of beekeepers will, and I can. I usually wait till March and April. That's usually whenever I this year I kind of waited till the bees made some swarm cells and just used those swarm cells for splits from that colony. It's kind of how I did it this year. I'll probably do the same thing next year. It worked out really good.
That's we can, if you've got queens, if you've got access to queens, I can make some splits in April.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't even try raising a queen out here until probably mid-May. Um, some people will try it 1st of May, and it's hit and miss. Some years they might get away with it. If they've got, if they have bees that are coming from California that have been down to almonds, they might have enough drones in the area to do that. But for me, I don't even try. I don't take my
Yeah.
bees to California. I don't even try until about, I don't mind starting raising queens about the 1st of June, end of May, 1st of June. And then they're kind of coming off that first or second week in June. That's okay. And there's plenty of drones, and the weather's good enough. But May is, for us, the weather can be good. It can be bad. It can be stormy. It could be
Hmm.
warm. It could be cold. It could be snowy. You just never know. So I don't even try until June to raise my queens. So I get late. I actually like the late summer queens. Um, I raise all my own queens. I say that, but then I will occasionally bring in some queens, but I haven't bought a package or a nuke since the second year I
Oh,
kept
wow.
bees.
Hmm.
I've never bought a package or a nuke from somebody. I have bought queens, but for the most part, I raise my own queens. I used to primarily use the OTS method, the on the spot um, queen rearing that Mel Disselcohen um, talks about in his book. And I did that for several years. Now I'm grafting my own queens and raising him that way. But I like doing that. That's something that I've started doing, and I really like raising queens.
Hmm. My next question slash topic. I usually ask every beekeeper because the saying is that you can ask a beekeeper the same question, a lot of beekeepers the same question, and you never get the same answer. So what are some lessons that you have learned this year, or any that you can kind of think of that you might have figured out this year?
This year, I kind of learned my lesson on raising some queens. My
Hmm.
first round of queen grafting went pretty well. My second round was a complete dud. I grafted 30 cells. I didn't get a single one. And it's partly my own fault. I think what happened to me this year was, one, the day I grafted, it was blazing hot. Oh, it was 90 plus 95 or 96 or something. So it was really hot. And I think I dried out the larvae and just wasn't quick enough to get them back in the hive before they dried out. And then two, I was I was kind of thinking that I might have a virgin queen running around in the hive that I was using for a cell builder, but I wasn't positive. And then after I grafted and I pulled up the graft frame and I started looking closely at the cells that were left. There wasn't many of them. They'd all been chewed out from the side, and from there I kind of knew I've got a virgin queen running around in this hive,
Mhm.
and I knew better than to just. I should have just started another cell builder, but I didn't. I was in a hurry, and I need to listen to myself a little more and not think, oh, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And this time it wasn't. Um,
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, that cell builder was just packed with bees. One thing, if you notice the hives behind me, I run all mediums. I run mediums for my brood chamber and my honey supers, and I had uh, three mediums that were just boiling with bees for my cell builder, which is exactly what you want. But I had so many bees in there, and then when I realized I think I've got a virgin queen running around, I'm like, okay, how am I ever going to find her? And so I knew the bottom box that I'd given them a bottom box just to give them some more room because there were so many bees in there, and they completely drew out the bottom box with comb.
Oh wow.
And I thought, well, if the queen's going to be anywhere, she's going to be down there in that bottom box because that's the only open space they had left. They'd packed it full of honey, and I thought, well, that's going to be the only open space left. So I took the hive apart, pulled off the other boxes, went down to the bottom box, and the very first frame I pulled up, I found the virgin queen on it, and I was like, okay, that's a 1 in a billion chance of. So I put it back together, and I just said, okay, well, I didn't get any queen cells out of it, but I did get a new hive. So I just left her. I need to go check her and make sure she got mated. She probably did, but I need to go check her again and make sure she's mated and then see if I can find her and mark her. That's going to be a challenge.
Hmm. Jason said we are getting some light rain right now. Yay, it will evaporate before it even soaks into the soil, though. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we were kind of talking before a little about it. We'll kind of talk about it more. I
Jason's in Utah.
He is.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, Jason. I know Jason. He's in Utah, but he's out. We call it the Wasatch Front, so he's out closer to the Salt Lake area,
Hmm.
um, which is about from me is about 150 miles
Oh wow.
east or
Yeah.
west of me.
Hmm.
So he's a ways west of me, and he's right. If it rains at all, it either evaporates before it hits the ground, or um, it hits the ground, and the ground is just so dry that it just soaks right in. It
Hmm.
doesn't even hardly puddle. It takes quite a bit of rain to puddle up in Utah,
Hmm.
especially this time of year.
Yeah. I was out in the BR today. Just doing some inspections and stuff, checking on some bees. I was really only planning to inspect one colony. That's really all I did. I was going to inspect more, but all of a sudden, got some type of rainstorm because I looked at the radar before. We really wasn't supposed to get any more rain, but it's just you never know down here. You can get like a little scattered thunderstorm for just maybe 10 minutes. It was like maybe 15, 10 minutes, and then it just went away. So it barely got wet. It really dried off pretty quickly. It's not as dry down here as y'all. It's most likely a lot more dry because down here we get a lot more humidity, and a lot of times in the morning it's really humid outside. That's why down here you could go out in the bee yard in the morning. It's kind of humid, but it's not as hot, which I usually do rather than going out in the middle of the day when it's really hot and sweaty. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah,
I,
when it's hot like this, you really have to just do your beekeeping in the morning,
mhm,
because by noon, 1 o'clock, it's just too hot to be out.
mhm, yeah. A lot of people say that you need to inspect around 12 o'clock to 2:30. I can't do that. That's way too hot. I much rather
Yeah.
I'll do it sometimes. I'll go out there, but I have to space it up a little bit. So a lot of times, I'll go out a little bit for about an hour, for about 30 minutes, come back in, and then maybe go out a different time, kind of space it up. But I can do it in the morning. It's much more better. It's not as hot in the mornings.
Yeah. That's me. If I wait too long, it's too hot outside, and I come home and I'm beat if I try to do it during the afternoon. I
Yeah.
can't do it,
Yeah, me neither.
and it's dangerous to do it out. If it's that hot, heat stroke is, uh, and out here it's easy to get in that situation just because it's so dry. You sweat and it evaporates quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I noticed that when I was down there a month ago with Bruce and helping him harvest his honey. Man, you sweat, but it doesn't evaporate.
Right.
And up here, it'll evaporate instantly.
Oh
You don't.
wow.
It's you sweat and it's gone. And if you have even just a little bit of a breeze, that feels really good for a brief minute. But
Right.
um, the heat is very different up here. Having dry heat versus
Humid.
humid heat. Uh,
Because down here, you're saying sweat, it don't evaporate. Down here, you're once you're soaked, if you're out there, it's not gonna evaporate. So up there it does though, right?
oh
That's
yeah, oh
that's
yeah.
interesting. Wow. My next question is, what is your favorite and least favorite thing about keeping honeybees?
My favorite thing. I asked this question of several beekeepers when I went to Nobby this year. What is it about getting into the bees that if you walk out into the bee yard and you're all by yourself and you crack that lid on that hive, what is it about getting into the bees that you just love? And for me, one of the things that I just love is the smell. A
Hmm.
good, healthy hive has a certain smell to it, and I love that smell. I love white wax, which I think most beekeepers do. Um, and I love raising queens. Since I've started grafting queens and I've raised my own queens from the beginning, but since I started grafting queens, I really like doing that. So seeing a new queen and seeing a full sheet of brood off that queen that you raised, yeah, that's very satisfying for me.
Right. So my next topic is, how do you manage your bees? Mite treatments, feeding, that type of stuff.
Um, well, where do I start? So I kind of consider my bee season to start for the next year right after I pull my honey. And I'll
Hmm.
pull my honey here in a couple of weeks. Most people in Utah, we kind of tell people in Utah, you need to get your honey off by Labor Day. So by the 1st of September, I like doing mine a little bit sooner than that. And that's because my season is a little bit shorter than, say, Jason's out there closer to Salt Lake. We seem to have about a 3-week difference, believe it or not. So I like to pull my honey about first or first week in August, second week in August. Usually by the third week of August, I've got my honey off and extracted. And to me, that's when the next season starts. And it really started before that, but for all intents purpose, I start in my mind. That's kind of where it starts. And I manage my bees in medium boxes. I use all mediums.
Oh,
During the summer, I use, if you see this hive behind me, these bottom two mediums that are yellow boxes, that's my brood chamber. And then there's a queen excluder. And then everything above that is honey. So the blue box and the yellow box on top, that's honey. And I'll just keep adding supers as needed for the hive. And I usually bottom super. Um, but this top box that's yellow, that's their honey. So I kind of let them store their honey first and make sure that that hive has enough honey for winter. Then I'll come in and harvest all the blue boxes out of the middle there, and the top box goes back down to the bottom. So I'll overwinter
okay.
my bees in 3 mediums, which is really the same volume of space as too deep.
Right.
But I'm in 3 mediums, and I try to fill that. The top medium is completely full of honey. I like to have the second medium as nearly full as I can get it, which really pushes that queen down into that bottom box to start winter. And that lets those bees, as winter progresses, they can work their way up, which is what their natural instinct is. I also do put dry sugar on top of my hives for winter as insurance. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't, and I'm okay either way. So I'll put, I call them a sugar shim. They're a rim about 2 inches high, and I'll line that rim has half-inch hardware cloth on the bottom, and then I'll line it with newspaper, and I'll pack about 5 to 6 pounds of sugar on top of them. And that's just there for insurance, because some winters are really long and drawn out. They might not get a cleansing flight clear till February, or if they get one in February, we feel lucky, but they might be the end of March before they really even get a cleansing flight. So they've really been at least November, December, January, February. They've been 4 months without a cleansing flight. And we can have some cold weather clear into May. So that sugar is just my insurance to make sure that they don't run out of stores. Come April, then we usually can get into our hives and start kind of doing some management and seeing what's going on. Going into fall, I'll do a fall treatment right after I pull my honey. I usually use either Apiguard, thiamol based, or I'll use Formic Pro, depending on the temperatures. Like right now, it's way too hot to use Formic Pro, and even if I use Apiguard, I'm going to have to cut down the dosage to half and do multiple doses of Apiguard. When I get into October, then I'm probably going to hit them with 2 or 3 rounds of oxalic acid vaporization, and that gets them cleaned up pretty good going into winter. If you're around here, if your hives are not cleaned up of mites going into winter, they're not going to make it. They can't do it. And then coming out in the spring, if I get a warm day, I may hit them again a couple of times with another oxalic acid coming out of spring in March or something. And by that time, they're usually really pretty clean. I usually don't have very many mites coming out of winter, just because mites need that brood to reproduce. And we have such long brood breaks in our hives. My queens aren't laying during that time. They may start laying a little tiny patch in February. By March, they're usually laying okay, but in order for them to do that, they've got to keep those hives, that brood, at 93, 94, 95 degrees, somewhere around there. That's difficult out here if it's 10 degrees at night. So that takes a lot of resources. So you really have to watch the feed out here and make sure they've got enough food on them, because they can starve out quickly. So feed is a big deal out here for me. I have to make sure I'm leaving enough honey on them, and maybe even supplying some extra sugar for them clear into March, April. And I may feed clear into April just to get them through before we really start to get a nectar flow end of April, first part of May. Then we start to get some nectar to come in, and it's usually just a little bit. And then from there, I'm usually May, June, I'm stacking honey supers. Towards the end of June, I'm raising new queens and replacing old queens, end of June, 1st of July, and making up nukes. I'll make up a bunch of extra nukes at that time as well. and then just let them go until about middle of August, and then I'll pull honey again and treat, and we do it all over again the next year.
Nice. Oh, we have a couple questions here. I think you kind of answered it. You know what you're saying, but how much honey do you leave on for winter in your area?
Um, I'm leaving at least a full medium is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 pounds of honey. I like two mediums. Around here, they kind of tell you 60 to 70 pounds of honey for winter, and that's on a cold winter. They'll go through every bit of that, and it does depend a little bit on what subspecies of bees you have. If you have Italians, 70 pounds of honey, Italians will eat that in a heartbeat. You'll open that hive in 1st of March, and they won't have a grain of sugar left. They won't have a drop of honey left. They'll eat themselves out of house and home.
Mm-hmm.
If you go with more of a conservative bee like a Carniolan or maybe even a Caucasian or a Russian, haven't had very good luck with Russian or Saskatraz. I've actually never tried Russian, but I know a few people around here, and they've had a hard time with them. Then, like I like the Carniolans for out here because they overwinter well out here, even in this cold, and they brood up quickly. They don't keep a lot of brood, and they don't keep a big cluster during the winter. And so when I went from 2 hives to 20 hives, I bought 10 Italians and 10 Cardiolans. And since then, I've just kind of raised queens off of whichever hives were really good. And and I can tell from my hives which tend to lean a little more to the Carniolan side and which ones tend to lean towards the Italian side, just by their color, and how much, what kind of population they hold during the winter. I've had hives come out of spring and they've eaten everything in the hive. There's nothing left. Well, those are mostly in Italian genetics, and I've had other hives come out with a small volleyball size cluster of bees and or even smaller, and I think, oh, you guys aren't going to make it through the rest of the winter. And come May, those bees have exploded, and they've got boxes. They've filled both boxes of bees, and they just explode when they're ready to. But I've gone into, say, this hive right behind me, and even though I left them a full honey super and really 2 honey supers that are 2 boxes that are full of honey, they've only eaten part of one, and they haven't even touched the other one. Big difference with the Carniolan of how they overwinter. So you have to manage them a little different. I'd like to get more Carniolan in my stock, but I realize my drone population, or my drone pool out here, is coming mainly from the commercial beekeeper that's around here, and he's going to run a more Italian stock because he's taken his bees to California. So it's a little bit difficult to keep that Carniolan line going around here.
Glade, do you pull around Pioneer Day or more like the first week of August?
I'm going to pull more like the first or second week in August is typically when I pull.
When are you making your candy boards? Is that October or more like November? I want to wrap a hive in tar paper and see how it goes.
That's basically what I do. Is I'll make my candy boards. I won't put them on until about November, about the 1st of November. If you put them on too soon, believe it or not, the bees will get up there into that candy board and they'll drag the sugar right out of the hive. And literally you'll have a pile of sugar right off the entrance of your hive. They look at it as a foreign object that needs to be cleaned out. But if you wait until after they've started to really cluster up. So for me, that's about the first part of November. Jason, for you, you might be more like the middle of November before they're really doing that. But I usually about the 1st of November, I'll put my candy board on, and I'll take my hives. I've got, if I move out of the way, I usually have 2 hives per stand, and I'll take those 2 hives and I'll push them together and butt them up against each other. Um, and then I'll take some tar paper and go. Really, all I do is just go up and over the top and down the side and tack the tar paper down. Excuse me. The tar paper, it's not insulation, and I realize that, but it does provide a little bit of a windbreak, and that can be helpful out here. We do get some wind, and it does provide a little bit of thermal gain on those winter sunny days. Not much, but a little bit. So I do it. It's probably, and some years I've not done that with tar paper, and my bees have survived just fine. But I think it's more of a makes the beekeeper feel better. So I do it.
Yeah. My next question. Let's see. I think I have most of them. Oh, here's one. I am kind of curious. Do y'all have small hive beetles up where y'all are at?
No, we do not have small hive beetle. It is too dry. They
Oh.
don't survive well here.
Hmm.
Occasionally we'll see one, um, just because the bees have been in California and they've picked up a small hive beetle down there from another hive, and they'll get brought back. But you might, I'd never seen a small hive beetle until I went to Bruce's in Alabama.
Yep, we have a whole
It,
bunch of them down here.
I'd never seen one. So we don't have to deal with that little pest.
Yep, they can be annoying. Definitely. Let's see. I'm just going through some. I did ask you some lessons this year. I do want to ask, what are some lessons you have learned in your beekeeping career, your journey?
Never stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you've figured out the bees and you've got that down and you don't need to read anymore and you don't need to study anymore and you've learned everything there is to know, um, I think you're mistaken. Um, I'm always learning. I'm always watching somebody go do something that I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know. I didn't know that about the bees. I didn't, and I consider myself pretty self-educated. Um, I've read I've read tons of books, and for me, I think the learning process in the beekeeping world is critical. If you're not constantly learning and willing to learn what other people are doing and why they're doing it, I I think you're missing out. Um, yeah, I agree with DC.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every time I open a lid, I learn something or see something I've never seen before. And if you're
Same.
paying attention, you are. And I personally, I like that aspect of beekeeping, knowing there's kind of a never-ending uh, path for learning. You can always learn something. But what I find, and I've been part of the Utah beekeeping crowd for a few years now. I was actually on the Utah Beekeepers Association uh, board of directors for a few years, and that's kind of the state level association. And some really good people, some really good beekeepers. But there's always a few that just seem to think they know everything and they don't need to
Mm-hmm.
learn anything. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think there's always something to learn from somebody else, the way they do things. In fact, this last conference that we had, there were 2 of us speaking at the conference, and we're both just about the same size of beekeepers, but we do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to listen to him and how he how he kept his bees and how he managed bees, and how that was different for than what I was doing. Doesn't make him wrong, doesn't make me right. It's just different. And I learned a few things from him. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to try that. And some things may work well for you, and some things may not. But if you're not learning, I think you're missing out.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot to learn.
DC, how many are you looking at taking into winter this year? I usually am somewhere between 25 and about 35 hives during the summer. But this time of the year, I'm making up extra nukes because I do sell some nukes in the spring. And so I'm sitting, I think I'm at 49 right the moment. Some of those are just new nukes that I just started, and with some care, I can feed those nukes and get a 5/5 nuke. I can get them through winter quite well. It takes some care at this time of year because there's not a lot of, we don't have a real strong nectar flow right now. In fact, our nectar flow is waning off. So I think I'm usually what I have to do is feed pretty heavily those nukes and get them kind of up to weight and ready for winter. But you can get winter nukes through winter out here if you do it
Mm-hmm.
right.
Well,
And that is something I've learned over the years. I used to think, oh, I've got to have 3 boxes full of bees in order to get through winter. And I've learned since then that no, if you do it right, you can get a 5 frame over 5 frame nuke through winter just fine. And that queen comes out in the spring. She's a summer queen. She's really just starting to hit her stride come that next spring, and they just explode. If she's a good queen, she'll just explode that next spring and just go gangbusters. So that's part of the reason I do what I do is I like my late summer queens. I'll even requeen my production hives this time of year. In fact, I just requeened several of them. Had I had a better take on my second round of queen cells, then I would have requeened more hives. I'm going to go through winter with some 1-year-old queens this year. I like having brand new queens, but I don't mind having a year-old queen in my hive if she's still performing well. And I do have, in fact, I still have one hive out there that has a 2-year-old queen in it, and she's still just going like crazy.
DC says, have you started grading colonies yet and thinking of that at the end of season?
Not quite yet. I haven't pulled my honey supers yet. Like I said, I'm going to do that here in a couple of weeks. And as soon as I do that, then I'll start grading my colonies and saying, okay, this queen's not doing well. Maybe she's just getting mated. Maybe she's a last year queen that she's starting to fizzle out. And at that point, then I'll start doing some combines and eliminating a few that are just not doing well. And so I think I'm at 49 at the moment, but I'll probably end up down around 40, 42 or something by the time I get everything combined. And I'll go into winter with somewhere between 40 and 45. And then come spring, I'll probably sell off about a dozen of those. Not all of them will make it through, but I usually only have, this last year I was more like about a 15% loss over winter. And that's pretty typical. Somewhere between 10 and 15% loss for me is pretty normal. Mm-hmm. So I do. Even with our cold winters, I do okay.
Because they'll have some pretty tough winters compared to ours. But last year we got some snow. It was pretty crazy to
Yeah.
us. We were doing videos of it. We barely get snow. If we every once in a while, we might get a couple flakes come down, but nothing big. But last year, snow was everywhere on top of the trees. We actually even had a limb that broke off. It was a pretty big one too, off a tree of how heavy all that snow was
Yeah.
accumulating on the
That wet, heavy snow. Last year was not a big snow year for us. The year before that, however, was a big snow year. Um, I have I have a cabin on the mountain north of me, and we had so much snow that year. Of course, it's on the mountain, and we usually get quite a bit up there. But I literally had snow clear to the roof line of my cabin.
hmm Glad it missed your hives. Yes, I'm glad too. I'm glad no limbs broke off there. It's definitely a possibility, of snow down here because our trees and stuff ain't really used to it. So then, we
Yeah, and we're used to it. Some we don't even blink if we get 4 or 5 inches of snow.
yeah
That's just normal. That's
yeah
just part of living here.
yeah.
Um,
Because down here we had like I don't know maybe around 4 or 5 inches. Some
yeah,
places
I saw at least Bruce's video. I'm like, wow, they got some snow,
yeah.
enough to cover everything up and make it white. But
hmm
and some years we'll get quite a bit of snow, and some years we'll hardly get any. Um, and that's not usually good for the bees because the plants, the groundwater it's just so dry. We need that snow out here in order for the plants to really grow. Um, it, we still, even though we may not get the snow, we'll still be cold though. We'll still be down single digits at night, and even below zero is not uncommon.
hmm DC said that is one thing I think of with my yard being in the trees. 'Cause my yard is also in trees. It's kind of why my name is Wildwood Honeybee Farms. It's kind of in woods. And on one of my premieres or something, DC thought our house wasn't really nearby. That I was just in a random spot in the middle of the woods, but our house is right there outside of the bee yard. You just have to walk right out, go, maybe 100 feet, and there it is. Um,
Well, and you can kind of see behind me. This picture behind me was taken early in the spring. This is probably mid-May, and there's not. I don't know whether it was mid-May or not. It's pretty dry. Things were just it's probably still April because I occasionally will get a knife of a spring flow that I can get a little spring honey, but that was probably my first time stacking a super on any of my hives. But you can tell it's pretty dry. The grass is dry. If you could see down into that, you would start to see there is green growth underneath all that brown, and that's that new spring growth. But even the trees back here, these are Russian olive trees right here, and they haven't even leafed out yet.
Rick from Fishing for Bees says snow is great insulation on top of the lids here in Michigan.
Yeah, snow is actually a great insulator, and so I don't mind it snowing on my hives at all.
Yeah, because it was all whenever it snowed here last year, it was all over on the entrances, on the top covers, on the roof, on the cars, on the porch. It was everywhere. It stayed for a couple days because it stayed pretty cold for the next couple days. But the bees did well; they got through it. I mean, did well.
If
So
and that's what's a little bit hard out here is our springs. We have such up and down with temperatures. We might hit 60, 65 degrees during the day, but at night it's still going down below 30. And so those bees they'll break cluster during the day, but they've still got to get back in the hive and form that cluster before it gets too cold. And that's hard on bees. And it takes them a little while to form that cluster. They don't just hurry and all cluster together real quick. It takes a little bit of time for that cluster to form. And if it cools off too quickly, it can be really hard on the bees for do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do I tilt my hives for melting runoff? I do tilt them just a little bit, but honestly, I don't worry about it too much. I like, typical tilt them a little bit towards the front. So if there's any runoff, it's running off and out of the hive, not into the hive. My hive stands, you can't tell it, but when I set them up, I do tilt them towards the front just a little bit, just to get that runoff. I don't worry about rain. We don't get enough rain to worry about that. But the snow, if we get enough snow, then the snow you're looking at the back of my hives. The entrance is around the other side of the hive. The snow can cover up that entrance. And so if we get enough snow, then I have to go out and actually just clear off the front entrance so that they can get out. Typically I don't have to worry about it too much because they're not coming out very often.
Yeah.
If I see a day that we're going to hit, 40, 45 degrees, then I go out and make sure that they have a way out of the hive and they can get out. But I've had hives that, and this is something I'm still toying with, and maybe those that live in a cold climate can tell me what they're doing. But I used to run with the entrance wide open, clear across the hive, and my bees survived. And then I've started putting an entrance reducer on my hives, but leaving it open to the widest opening on the entrance reducer, and my hives survive.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some hives that have propolized the entrance, that full width entrance. They've propolized the entire thing shut and left just enough space for about 2 bees to come and go. So, which is the right way to do it? I don't know that I can tell you that. It seems to me that the bees want a smaller entrance in my area for winter.
Mm-hmm. How many times do you go through your hive and say to yourself, "Yeah"?
What the? Yeah. About every 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
I try to get around to my hives about every 2 weeks, and it's not uncommon for me to go, "What are you doing? What?
Yep.
This is not this isn't this doesn't look like the hive I just got out of.
Yep.
What are you doing, bees?" And sometimes I'm like, "Okay, you guys seem to know what you're doing, and I'm going to let you go." And
Mhm.
the next time I come back, everything seems to be normal. So,
Yeah. I do the
um,
same thing all the time. How many
how
entries
many
do you have?
hives do I have?
How many entries? The entrances.
Oh, entrances. During the winter, I only have, and again, this is one of the things that I'm still trying to figure out in my area. When I started keeping bees, I was taught you've got to have the bottom entrance, and you've got to have an upper entrance, a small upper entrance, to vent off that warm, moist air. What happens in our area is, because we're cold, you have a cluster of bees in the hive breathing and exhaling warm, moist air. Well, what happens to that? Warm, moist air rises and it hits the underside of the top cover and condenses because it's cold. And when it condenses on that underside of the lid, then it rains back down on the bees, wet bees or dead bees. So, in order to avoid that, a lot of beekeepers leave a small upper entrance, and let that warm, moist air vent off the hive. It works. It
Mhm.
it does. If you've got healthy bees, they can make it through winter just fine like that. Since then, I'm starting to take more of the position of what the industry's kind of terming the condensing hive, where We close off the upper entrance. We put some insulation, and I've been using 2-inch foam board, the pink styrofoam insulation. So I put on my sugar shim, and then on top of that, I put a 2-inch foam board on top of that. I close off my upper entrance. I reduce my bottom entrance down to just a few inches, the widest setting on the entrance reducer. And now what happens is that warm, moist air the bees are still in there breathing. The warm, moist air rises. It hits the underside of the lid, which is now warmer, and now it doesn't condense on the underside of that inner cover or the lid. It gets pushed to the outside walls and then condenses on the outside walls, which is fine. It doesn't hurt the bees for that to happen. And if the bees need moisture, the bees need water in the winter. Even in my cold climate and it's freezing outside, the bees still use water. They have to have water to mix with the honey in order to consume that honey. It's too thick for them to eat it straight. So they still need some water in order to do that. But now they have access to water on the outside walls that they can go get and bring back into the cluster and use as they need it. And yes, that outside walls, the water condenses on the outside walls and freezes. I've had an entire layer of frost on the outside walls of my hives, and the bees are just fine. So I've done it both ways. I've had upper entrances during the winter. During the summer, I like an upper entrance into my honey supers. I think it kind of cuts down on the congestion down in the brood area. But now I've kind of changed my tune a little bit, and I've gone more to close that upper entrance, give them some insulation on top, and shrink down the bottom entrance down to a few inches. And I think my bees actually overwinter a little better that way.
Mm-hmm. I of course have my bottom entrance, and then I all my supers that I have a little hole big enough for multiple for a bee or maybe two bees to go through, and they use that for their upper entrances. So every super that I really have has that. So a couple I don't if I have a double deep, they just have just the bottom entrance, because most of my deeps don't have holes in them, because when we got into beekeeping, we kind of started with doing only supers, kind of what you're doing. But I kind of changed. I use deeps now, and work good for down here for me. And I just never put holes in there, since, especially in the bottom ones. There I just didn't find no need. But in the supers, they have some holes in there for entrance and upper entrance. And I don't really close those off during winter. I guess I could, but since we don't have as harsh winters,
it's different for you. You're not
right?
getting that harsh winter. For us, managing moisture in the hive during winter is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two ways to approach it. Either give them an upper entrance, let that warm, moist air vent off, or close the upper entrance. But if you do that, you've got to provide some insulation on top to help push that warm, moist air to the sidewalls and let it condense on the sidewalls, which is kind of the direction I've been leaning the last few years. And I like it. It's a little more work, but I like it. I think the bees do a little better with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we've been going for about an hour and 4 minutes now. I guess we'll get close to wrapping it up. Thank you all for joining in to the podcast tonight. I appreciate everybody who's watching on the replay, or who's on the live stream now. I appreciate everybody. We got up to around like 30 people. That's really cool as well. So thank you all. Thank you, Glade, for spending some time tonight and joining me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Grayson. I appreciate you and giving me the invite. It's good to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. Hope we bump into each other in the future.
Hope so too. You going to the expo this year?
I haven't decided yet. I would love to.
Yeah.
I'm leaning that direction, but I haven't bought tickets yet.
Excited. Me too. I'm still thinking about it. We're kind of the same, but I'm hoping to go this year. We haven't ordered tickets yet. We probably will very soon. Well,
Yep.
anyway, thank you all for joining tonight. Really appreciate it. Make sure to click that thumbs up button on your way out. Glade's channel his link is in the description below. So if you are not subscribed on your way out, make sure just to press that link and go over there and subscribe. Make sure to like this live stream on your way out. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate everybody greatly. We'll catch you next time. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Grayson. Good night.